continue on in our two-part series on rhinestoning. If you haven't watched part 1 on how to rhinestone, check the description box. Go back and watch that first so you make sure you have everything you need. I have my trays, I have my stones, I have my rhinestoning tool, I have my E6000 fabric fuse, and I have, it's a little mini fascinator with a sunflower on it. So we're gonna work on rhinestoning the hat portion as well as the flower. So let's get started. So first thing we're gonna do, our glue. This is E6000 fabric fuse. It is a brand new bottle. So I'm going to get rid of the safety seal that's inside. Sometimes when you take this off, it will get stuck inside the lid. Sometimes it'll stay stuck to the top of the bottle. If it does get stuck inside the lid like this, then you can just take that lid and put, I have a unfurled paper clip here, and I'm gonna use that to get that little lid off of there. You can also use a pin or any other kind of pointy little object that'll fit down the spout of the glue and just remove that. I always get any kind of glue that's left over on it off of there and get that thrown away. And get your glue ready to rock and roll. Always keep this lid nearby. You do want to cap it after any prolonged moments of non-use to keep the glue from drying out. This glue is wonderful. The more times you open and close this jar though, the more times that it has a chance to get air inside of it and it could start to clog and dry out. So it is also a good idea to keep a pin or a paper clip nearby to unclog as needed. Like I said, this is a brand new bottle, so it's probably not gonna have any of those problems. All right, so with this glue doesn't need you to put it into a syringe or anything like that. So I use just the tip that comes on this bottle. So we're gonna take our project and we're gonna start our plotting. You can't really separate out technique from your theory approach. So it's all gonna kind of go, I'm gonna teach it kind of organically as it happens. There's really no right or wrong way to apply your rhinestones. It's all about the desired effect that you're looking for. On things especially like floral or lighter fabrics, anything that's suspended or stands away from your project, do consider the size of your stone and what it might do weight-wise to your project. With this flower, I'm gonna put bigger stones, if I want any bigger stones on this, towards the middle, and I'm gonna put smaller stones towards the edges, because I don't want it to get too weighed down. Sometimes weighing down, especially floral, can be actually helpful for what you're trying to achieve. So it's not like it's an absolute no-no, but in this regard, I want this flower to stay boingy and kind of far away from the base, so I'm gonna keep the stone size smaller towards the end. Stone size is something we didn't cover in our talk of the first video about the rhinestones. We mainly went over brands, but when you do buy stones, stone size, or SS, is usually how you see them classified. They'll be classified by SS 10, 16, 20, 30, 40, there's SS 12, there's SS 8, and that SS and the number corresponds to a size of millimeters size of the stone. So it's pretty universally standard across the industry. I'll put up a chart here that shows you kind of what the different SS's mean and how big they are. This is, for reference, an SS 16. I know that just from looking at it. I've worked with rhinestones enough that I know all of these sizes that are sitting here on my tray in front of me just by eyeballing them. And there is just a little bit of variation between brands. The 20 from this less expensive DMC, and this is the Pellosa brand SS20. So you can see that they're a little different. The cheaper brand is a little bit smaller than the SS20 in the Pellosa. So there is just a tiny bit of variation, so you do have to be careful. If I were using this, the cheaper stones for a project and then switched over in mid-roll to Pellosa jet stones, you would be able to tell in my project that there is a difference. These are SS16 topaz stones from Shine Art. They are a non-hot fix. That's another detail we didn't speak about in the first video. These are non-hot fix. Backing can either be just a silver foil back, or there can be an adhesive on the back of the stone called hot fix. And this kind of adhesive, you can also just glue straight over it. You don't have to use the adhesive that comes on the stones, but you activate that adhesive with a hot tool or an iron, some sort of a heat source. It heats up, it gets a wet look to it, and that's when you know it's ready, and then you place the stone. So you can use the adhesive on these. I just tend to use glue with whatever type of either hot fix or non-hot fix. I just use E6000 fabric fuse, just because it's easier, it's less fussy. The hot tool or the iron method can be kind of painstaking, and I work faster with glue. So I'm gonna pour out some of these topaz stones from Pellosa in SS20. You can see they're the same color, just different sizes. 20 is a little on the bigger side. 16 is kind of a medium size. And I'm going to use those on the inside part of the flower where the color is a little more of an orange yellow. So I'm going to uncap my glue and I'm going to place my glue. So you can see that this glue flows pretty easily. It's a brand new bottle, so there's no clogs in it. It's nice and viscous. It's ready to go. So I'm gonna start placing some dots. You'll kind of learn the size of dot that you need based on the size of stone. When we grab the stone and push it into the glue, it comes up and around the edges just a little bit. As you can see from what I said in the last video where I don't push with this tool, I sometimes will move things around with it, but for the most part I push with the wax end. I'm impatient. Sometimes these tools do get glue transferred onto the tips of them, so you do have to sometimes go through and gently roll off some glue residue if you find it's not picking up like it should. There we go. Now it's gonna start picking up like we want it to. And you'll kind of learn the pressure that you need to pick up your stones and push them in. So like this dot here is a little too small. So if I wanted to put one of these SS20s on there, I'm gonna need to go back and add more glue. But instead, I'm just gonna put a 16 on it. So I want kind of a mix of sizes in this area. So I'm going to use some of the smaller glue dots that I laid down for the 16s. We've got all the glue dots. We've got rhinestones on them. And you'll also kind of learn your speed and your ability on how quickly you can place stones and how many dots you can do. I'm really fast, so I know that I can place dots and put stones on them pretty quickly, so I can put a lot of dots down before they would dry or set too much to be able to use. So like I was saying earlier, different stone sizes have a different weight to them. I don't want the edges of these petals to be weighed down at all, so I'm gonna go ahead and use these tiny little SS10s to add some yellow to the yellow tips of this flower. So I'm gonna place much smaller dots of glue, and since they're smaller, we can do more stones. So I'm gonna place some smaller dots. Smaller stones are fussier, so you'll notice that I am placing less glue dots at once because even I can't move quite that fast. So we can see now that we've got some of these petals done. And I kind of want this orange to taper into them a little more. So I'm gonna add a little SS16 topaz, kind of to transition that color just a little bit more. So I'm gonna go back and pour myself some SS16s of the topaz, and I'm gonna fill it in a little bit. So this is a little bit of the theory and the creativity that goes into rhinestoning. So it's kind of evolves as it goes. Some of the most beautiful things I've created have been, as Bob Ross would probably call them, happy accidents. So don't be afraid to have an idea, but don't necessarily be married to that idea. So I am going to finish rhinestoning this, and then I'm gonna come back and we're gonna rhinestone that center piece. I'm trying to mimic the center of an actual sunflower. An actual sunflower has seeds in the center. So I'm thinking of the colors that happen inside of that center of the sunflower. So we've got SS20 in jet, we've got SS20 in topaz and smoked topaz, and we have SS16 in the gold hematite. So a few different sizes, and I'm just going to cover the middle of this flower because we're going to completely encrust it. We've got our colors poured out, and now we're just going to start placing. I want kind of an irregular, organic kind of a feel to this because I'm mimicking the inside of a sunflower. So I'm just going to kind of choose at random and place at random to give it more of that feel. When you're working on a project that you're going to encrust like this center, where it's just solid stones, whether it's in a really intricate pattern or just a color, you do want to be careful about the flexibility of the project. So this piece in the center of this hat is not going to move very much. So the fabric, the material, isn't going to bend a lot. Something solid and encrusted like that, it can't really bend a lot. It gets to just to be kind of a solid lump together. And the more bending you make it do, even though this glue is made to stretch, the more bending that you do with this, the more opportunity arises for the stones to pop off. You also, if you had something stretchy fabrics will lose their stretch if you put solid lumps of stones on them. So you might want to actually stretch a project over something in order to get a stretchy fabric to have a lot of stones on it. Also, if you're stoning in a straight line, like we're about to do on this edge here, when you stone in a straight line, if your stones are touching one another and they're on a material that's going to flex and bend a lot, the stones themselves, the edges, are sitting next to each other and they're gonna rub on each other and they'll pop each other off. So sometimes instead of like doing the edge of a garment or a seam solid end to end where the stones are touching one another, it's good to leave just a little bit of space in between each stone so that they don't hit each other and pop each other off. In this instance, it wouldn't really matter, as this base, even though it does flex, for what it's going to be used for how it's going to be worn, it's not going to flex a lot. So we could easily stone end to end here and probably not lose a lot of stones. But my aesthetic choice for this is going to be to stone this with little spaces in between. So I'm going to be using these gold hematite stones for the edge of this hat. So I'm just going through and I'm eyeballing roughly even spaces. You could use this trim as a reference for where you want the dots to be. Maybe in every other bump on the trim, you could put a bump of glue, or you could put it at the top of every one of these little points. So don't be afraid to use the patterns and the rhythm that happens in fabrics, in trims, in your garments or pieces that you're working on to help you space your stones and where to place your stones to kind of harmonize with the project. So you can see that we've got them on this piece of trim. So the next thing I'm going to do is pour out some of these SS10 Montana stones from Pellosa. And I'm holding this from the clip so that I don't have to touch any of that. That's another piece of strategy that you have to think about a little bit, is how you're going to approach your project. You got to kind of think of the logistics of where you're going to hold it while you work on it. So I did the flower first and then the base, because to do the flower I need to hold the base. I'm going to go in and place, these are SS10 stones, so they're relatively small. So we're going to be placing relatively small dots of glue on this. And I'm just doing kind of a generic scatter. If you wanted more dimension on the hat base here, you could use some different sizes of stones. So I'm doing 10s right now, and I think that's all I'm going to do. You could also go back with some 12s, some 16s, some 20s, and kind of fill in. When I do a scatter that has multiple sizes, I tend to do one size at a time. So I go in with the biggest size first, place those the furthest apart. Then I go in on a second round, place my dots in between the spaces that I just created by placing the 20s. and I put the dots down for the 16s, and then I repeat the process with whatever other sizes I'm going to use. For this, I'm just gonna keep it very simple. The flower on top is pretty loud, it's got a lot going on, so I'm gonna keep the base really simple. So we've got our little fascinator there. It is now stoned. You can always look at it after you finish it and make some more executive decisions. There's a lot of different artistic choices we could have made with this little fascinator. We could have done a lot of different things. So sky is the limit on how you want to create. It's your creation and you get to choose how it works. Thanks for tuning in today. I look forward to seeing you next time.